Welcome to Native Yoga Toddcast. So happy you are here. My goal with this channel is to bring inspirational speakers to the mic in the field of yoga, massage, bodywork, and beyond. Follow us at Native Yoga and check us out at nativeyogacenter.com. All right, let's begin. Hello, welcome to Native Yoga Toddcast. Today I sit and speak with Maria Margolies. Find her on her website, holistic.com, spelled Holixtic, and also find her on Instagram with the same handle at holistic, Holixtic. Link in the description. Click, give her a follow, and read through her profile and look at the amazing work that she's doing. I found her via social media, and I really liked and appreciate her. I appreciate her message. The topic of conversation that we go down is how can we change and or evolve the way that we see ourselves and the aging process in relation to nature. And is it possible for us to really love ourselves the way that we age and grow naturally, not need to change a lot to try to fit a mold of a certain ideal? And I think Maria is the perfect person to have this conversation with. She's passionate about this message, and I had a great time speaking and meeting with her. I hope that you enjoy this conversation. Thank you for all my longtime listeners, your support. If you want to watch this episode, go to our YouTube channel at Native Yoga, and you can watch the entire video. If you can subscribe, we appreciate it. If you're listening on one of your favorite platforms like Apple, Spotify, or Amazon, if you're kind enough to leave a review, it helps some other yogis and yoginis find this show. If you're enjoying the show, send both me and Maria a email message of any sort from any platform, and we'd love to hear what you think. Have a wonderful day. Let's get started. Namaste. I'm really honored to have this opportunity to sit down and speak with Maria Margolies. Maria, thank you so much for joining me today. Can you tell me how you're doing and how your day's been so far?
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to meet you and be here in this space. I'm having a great day. It's a beautiful day in New York. Spring feels like it's coming. And just really happy to be here to share some ideas and chat with you.
Cool. I really appreciate it. Though I was looking at Instagram and I wasn't following you, but one of your posts popped up, and I'll just read it really quick just so that the listener can get a gist. And so if anyone wants to go follow you on Instagram, your handle is Holistic. So it's spelled Holixtic. And you kind of did a juxtaposition of one photo of you with another photo of nature. So in this case, you had a picture and you say, "My body hair is disgusting and dirty. I need to shave." And below it, it says, "Like moss growing across the earth." You have a picture where you say, "My wrinkles make me look old. I need Botox." And then below that, you show a beautiful picture of like a sand wood element, like a canyon. It says, "Like canyon lines carved in time, the landscape of wisdom, the privilege of growing older." You have a picture where you take a picture of your abdomen and you say, "My belly is saggy and I wish I had flat abs again." And then you have sand dunes below that and you say, "Like sand dunes shaped by wind, motherhood reshapes the landscape." You have a picture of yourself and you say, "My cellulite is so ugly." And then you have beautiful mountain hills that say, "It's rolling hills at sunset, soft, dimensional, wild." "My skin is blotchy and uneven. I need makeup." And then you have a cool picture. It looks like to me like a picture of like the moon. It says, "Like the moon's surface, a beautiful landscape shaped by light." And a picture of "I hate my stretch marks." And then a picture of lightning and a cool imagery of like lightning lines. And it says, "There's lightning strikes across my skin, electric, powerful, alive." "My gray hair is showing. I should dye it to stay relevant." Below that, like streaks of sea foam across the magnificent ocean. And then at some point you start connecting the dots. "For decades, women have been told the ideal body is hairless, tiny, wrinkle-free, tight, forever young, an adult woman, expected to look younger and younger." And these standards didn't come from women. They were shaped by industries worth hundreds of billions of dollars: fashion, beauty, media, advertising, all profiting from one thing: women believing their bodies need fixing, stay young, stay smooth, stay small, or become invisible. And you keep going, talking about how the Epstein files exposed something many people had ignored. And powerful men in elite circles, billionaires, politicians, media figures, spiritual leaders, all connected to the trafficking network exploiting underage girls. The same elite circles have long shaped culture through fashion, media, and advertising. Industries that repeatedly promoted one image of, quote, beauty, youthful and hairless. It forces an uncomfortable question. Why does the, quote, ideal woman, end quote, increasingly resemble youth? When we're not supposed to compete with children, we're supposed to outgrow them. Look at the natural world. Mountains have ridges, rivers carve lines, oceans move in waves, lava reshapes the earth, planets have texture, the moon has craters, and we call them breathtaking. But when those same patterns appear on women, wrinkles, stretch marks, softness, change, we call them flaws. I could keep reading, but I think
So beautiful. Yeah, I know.
I
I
think it.
almost want to cry.
And when I read it,
Mm.
I was like, yeah, right on. And I've had that similar sort of realization. I think I commented on your post that I had a moment of, I remember seeing a sea turtle where there was barnacles on the turtle's shell, and someone had said, oh, we got to scrape those barnacles off. And I kind of thought, why would we be taking those off? I mean, if the barnacle grew on the shell and the turtle's happy and it's cruising, I mean, is it really slowing the turtle down? And isn't there probably a symbiotic reason for its existence? And it wouldn't be there if it wasn't meant to. And I just really resonated with your post. So I guess I'm really excited to have this opportunity to just kind of dive in on this subject of how we could potentially feel okay in our own skin and accept the changes that occur as we age. And so with all that being said, what's the first thought that pops into your mind?
Um, we just mess everything up. Humans aren't we? I just feel like one of the things that I love about yoga, and I've been a yoga teacher and student for half of my life, 25 years, I feel like, is that remembrance of the beauty that we are nature, right? And that we are a part of nature, and everything is divine design, and everything is how it's meant to be, right? And we're supposed to feel and exist as is, rather than trying to control, push away, change, resist, right? Which is kind of like what we're, as humans, without awareness, always trying to do, right? So I think that, like, back, bringing back to yoga, when we are in the mat, we accept all these things, right? We are trying to become one, yoga union. We are trying to become one with nature, to come back to that remembrance of nature, that we are one, that there's no separation, that there's cycles and energy that moves, that the breath moves in tides. And then I feel like when we step up off the mat, then we look at ourselves, and then that stops. Then we're like looking at ourselves and being like, oh, I have stretch marks. That's horrible. That's disgusting. Or, oh my God, I'm starting to get wrinkles. These are horrible. What, and then when we, like, where do those ideas are coming from, it's kind of like the question, because I feel like when we look at nature, we appreciate the uniqueness and the weird patterns and the asymmetrical, because there's rarely anything symmetrical in nature, or like perfect and shiny. Like when you look at the things that we are trying to compare ourselves on a daily basis, it's like these ideas of perfection, of like skin being completely, smooth, with no edges, with no wrinkles, with no, like marble or like plastic, something that's static, something that's fake, right? Or AI images or filter images that have, from fashion and from, photography, and all the things that we're fed on through culture all the time, that are modified. And even, the images of the actresses that are, never aging, right? Because we see we're growing up, and then we see these actresses always looking the same, and then, not changing. And so we are kind of comparing ourselves with that, right? Rather than comparing ourselves with our true nature, which is nature, right? And and look at ourselves like a tree, like when we look at an old tree, an ancient tree, it's cracked and grooved and like marked by time. We're not like, oh my God, that tree is horrible. We're like, wow, look how amazing this tree is. And like, how beautiful the branches and how it grows in all these ways. And every tree is different and every tree is telling a story, a storm it survived, a fire, the weather, the time. And so I think our body and ourselves, we deserve that kind of compassion and that kind of reverence, you know, and kind of dialogue, rather than the one that we've been fed and kind of brainwashed to talk about the way that we talk about ourselves and our and body image and all of that.
Yeah, well said. Beyond us having conversation about it and bringing it to light, where do you think some of this dismantling process of that? Because I guess when I think, well, why would we want to do this? Why? Because I know some of the resistance might come from like maybe one of the resistance questions or thoughts would be, well, I want to feel beautiful and I want to look handsome or I want to be attractive and have people, want to be around me. But I'm curious, where do we start to dismantle this? What do you, I mean, obviously you and I aren't going to go down to the advertising agency or to the AI developer and say, you need to stop doing this because it's really messing with people's heads. I mean, we could try that. I don't know if it would work, but I doubt it will work. So then as far as the underground movement of people that started just appreciating ourselves as who we are, where can we start to dismantle and really bring this to life?
Well, I think the resistance starts with ourselves. I think we have to really ask ourselves questions and where have these beauty standards? Because you're saying, like, I want to feel beautiful, but what is your definition of beautiful? Was that definition of beautiful created by yourself? Is that an innate thing that came, from nature, from your true, pure nature? Right? Like when I see my daughter, I have a 4-year-old, and the way she walks the world and the way she sees herself, she yet hasn't like developed this ego. She doesn't have like shame in her body. She doesn't like look at herself and be like, oh, I'm a little bit fat. I have a little bit roll here. I don't like this line. I don't like this people. She doesn't have that self-awareness and ego yet. And she doesn't have those ideas because those ideas haven't, she hasn't yet developed that. So, or learn them, right? So I think we have to think about, well, those ideas of beauty standards are not natural, right? There are ideas that have been engineered, like you said, from the fitness industry, which profits from us feeling ugly, from us feeling not worthy, for us feeling fat or old, or so like, or the beauty industry, like all this, like the wellness industry that's worth over $500 billion, are the ones that are profiting from us feeling ugly and unworthy all the time, right? And not on the anti-aging industry, right? Because that's mostly on women, because women are not allowed to age, right? We're supposed to always look the same. Men, the standards are very, very different, right? So when men age, are like, oh, they're beautiful. There's silver hair, silver fox, and there's all these things, right? And then women are like, you should dye your hair. Why don't you get your ring? Like when you see the things that are in the press, in the media about, women that are not doing that. I saw this thing about Rihanna the other day that was like, what happened to Rihanna? And that was the headline.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean, what happened to Rihanna? Like, she had 2 kids. She's built a, billion-dollar industry. I don't know. She's one of the most successful artists in the world. Like, life happened. Like, yeah, she doesn't look like she looks when she was 20. Why would she? Right? Why do we have that expectation that we cannot pass time, that we have to be frozen in time, especially for women? So I think the question is like, and where are these beauty standards coming from? And it's not like, yeah, I want to feel beautiful too. But what does beauty mean? Does beauty mean that I have to be frozen in time? Like, why do I think that that is the standard? And I think if we if we think, like, for example, if we were fed different stories when we were little, so if we were looking at magazines and seeing elder women with their, beautiful like gray hair and their wrinkles and their noses, different kinds of noses, because everyone gets a nose job now. So, like a pointy nose, a nose like this, like, like all these different kinds of beauties, like women with spots and freckles and, yeah, red hair and bigger bodies and all these things in all the industries, right? In the culture, things that are shaping culture. Then, and we would look at this woman and be like, oh, like these women are beautiful. Look at their wrinkles. These are the beautiful wrinkles of time and wisdom. Like, like the ancient indigenous communities that before they're colonized changed the story about how, like, yeah, women age and they were more powerful and respected than before. Even yogis, right? Like, you're in a yogi, a respected yogi when you practice for like a year or did a teacher training in that time, for like 100 hours. Like, no, just because you were flexible and thin and young, you were nothing, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
were really an elder teacher when you were like, had like the time, the experience, like all of that comes with age and experience and wisdom. So I think it's like those stories have been so manipulated, and that our idea of beauty is just so messed up. And
Yeah.
so we think that we need to do those things. And it doesn't mean like you're not, I don't want you to like be beautiful. Like, I know, like, let's embrace, but it's like, what is our idea of beautiful? Like, where did that come from?
Yes.
And trying to change those stories.
Yeah, great point, Maria. That's amazing. I'm really curious how, because interestingly enough, like you say, in terms of the external beauty component, and if we're measuring ourselves up against what we see on social media and advertisement relation just to the yoga industry, and we've all heard a lot of talk already over the last few years about, like, let's stop making it so much about the body and what the posture looks like, and only highlighting the ultra thin and smoothed out and perfectly shaped with the perfect outfit and color matching and all that stuff. Like, I know that it probably crossed most people's awareness at some point. And then, but what's interesting, like internally in terms of pain and what the body does as it ages, and then our attempt to try to keep the image up of the advanced asana practice, and then that evolution of understanding that I have to allow that to go, to let the pain go. Because if I keep trying to push my body into those places and I'm still feeling a lot of pain, and then the pain gets so overwhelming that I don't want the pain anymore, you kind of have to at some point let go of that whole image around it. Can you talk a little bit about your own journey and how that's evolved from when you started practice to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in this because, yeah, what you said about, what we see, what we've seen, especially I guess with social media, because I started yoga before social media. So I didn't, I guess weren't as influenced, but yeah, now that the aloe yoga girls and like all the most popular yogis on Instagram, they are white, they're young, they're the most flexible, and it does not taken away from any of like their effort or discipline or anything, but it is an image that we think, and able bodies, right? So we think that we have this idea of yoga and a yoga body that is ideal, right? That we need to be doing. And in terms of the and that, I feel like that only happens with colonialism of yoga, right? Like those yogis, the ancient practices weren't worried about any of that, right? And I think for me, I feel like I was also part of that. So I don't want to say that I am perfect, and I have I also helped with that culture because I was also taking the photos with my leg
Mm,
up, and
me
because we
too.
were all trying
Yeah.
to kind of fit in and see how we can like get attention, and how we can, just kind of like we're all trying to figure the social media out, and like, the best way to get attention is the hardest the pose, and how I can put myself in this pretzel movement moves and stuff. And I was able to do that at the time because, I was younger. I had a very advanced practice. I did advance, third series. And so, I was part of that, right? I definitely have my part in that, but I think for me, as a yoga practitioner of 25 years. I was an Ashtangi. I feel like I, I, I talk about me being a recovered Ashtangi because, even though, there is a lot of things that I loved about the practice. And obviously, I did it for 25 years, 6 days a week. And I dedicated my life and my whole identity was that Ashtanga teacher, Ashtanga practitioner. Um, I also, when I, when you get out of a cult and you can kind of see outside of it, like when you're in it, you can really see any of the issues. And people are like, well, why is that person doing that? That's crazy. And when you're in it, you're like, don't really see it as crazy, right? I was seeing this documentary, I don't know if you see it on Apple, about the Tara
Oh my,
yoga.
it's so funny you say that because my sister this morning was like, "Have you seen Twisted Yoga?" And I said, "No, not yet." She's like, "Oh my gosh, Todd, you have to watch that. Like, make sure you watch that because if you're interviewing
Yeah.
people, make sure you know who you're interviewing." And I said, I know, I will." But so I just heard about it today. So thank you for every time I get two messages in the same day. I'm like, okay, I'm doing it. So I'm so glad you're
Yeah. I
bringing it
mean,
up.
I
But
can't wait for it to come for the documentary about Ashtanga and Patabi just because I feel like it's coming, and that reminded me of this cult, culture which perpetuates, abuse and, all these things. And I feel when I really reflect back, I also feel like I was part of us, not in that level, but the Ashtanga tradition that I was practicing with Patabi Joys and this and at that time it was very cultish and it promoted an environment full of things that you think you'd never really would do if you weren't in a space like that. So I think that anyways, I don't know where that was going, but I
on a point on that, I guess the first thing that pops in my head is I remember being in Mysore, having a ton of back pain, feeling kind of rough, and getting up at 4 a.m.
and
and
doing it all over again.
being terrified in a way, like, okay, I have to go in, I'm going to do this. How am I going to do this? And at the time, I think I reasoned it out that this is the discipline. This is what discipline looks like. Discipline looks like showing up even though you're broken, even though you're
Hmm.
hurt, even though you're tired, you just show up. And so that's
And
how
you have to move through the pain.
and you have to move through the
Pain is an
pain.
opening.
Pain is an opening. And, and now in my 50s, I have to make decisions now about what I'm going to do with my body and move. And I have to let go of a lot of things that I really love because I think I probably pushed myself really, really hard. So I guess I just wanted to mention that because I agree with you 100%. And I don't want to interrupt you, but I guess to just maybe bring light if someone was wondering, well, like what kind of things were they having you do? So then what's a story or a feeling that like, if you had to
Well,
relate something that you feel like maybe you shouldn't have done that you were being coerced into, what happened for you?
no, I mean, for me, I think it was a really incredible practice that gave me a lot of discipline. Yeah, that it gave me a lot of purpose at the time that I needed. I was young. When I started practicing, I was 20, and it gave me purpose. It gave me discipline. It gave me one-pointed focus. It gave me resilience. It gave me, a beautiful community and relationships that I created at the time, and a lot of things, but there was also a dark side of it, and where it was like, yeah, I was pushing through my limits. Sometimes I had chronic back pain for years, for years, for years, for years, and I was like, why? No, I have to stretch more. There was a lot of abuse, maybe not sexual abuse that that I perceived in the time that I was there, but there was a lot of emotional abuse,
Yeah.
a lot of abuse of power, like abuse of power dynamics, the gatekeeping. There was it was a very cliquey, um, cultish vibe, and I always felt in a lot of ways that I've always have been like the rebellious kind, and I've always been kind of like very outspoken, and I really think for myself. So I think I didn't really fit that well. So I always felt a little bit ostracized from it. And I feel it is also, not a practice that's really accessible, that is very elitist in so many ways. And I felt like, it was very ego boosting rather than ego killing, which I think that's what, like a yoga practice should be. It attracts a very particular part of a type of people, and you can see the people that practice very well, like how they are. Not to say anyone is bad or better, or I'm better than anyone, but it just, I guess at some point it didn't work for me anymore. It didn't work for me anymore because I had my daughter at 42, and I was practicing still 6 days a week, jump backs, everything, with her in my belly. It was amazing. But yet I had a very traumatic birth with her. I had really, really long labor. I almost had to have a C-section. It was, I had an infection. Well, it was like a very intense
Can,
situation where I
can,
thought like, oh, I'm just going to birth this baby really easy because I'm a yogi and I have all the tools and everything. And so after that, I realized it really radicalized the way I like saw myself and showed up to myself, and how I saw the practice that I was doing, because it made me realize that I've been living with a pelvic floor dysfunction for over 10 years. And all the problems that I was having, like chronic back pain, was because of that, because I had a hypertonic pelvic floor. That happens a lot when you're contracting and the pelvic floor all the time, Mula Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, restricting your breath, tension, gripping, and overriding your body into more tension and not enough like nervous system regulation and relaxation and all of that. So I kind of found out all of those things after the birth of my daughter, and everything clicked, and I was like, oh, okay. So how do I heal myself? And then one of the things was I have to change how to practice, And so I took a step back and started, reshaping my own practice and how I approached, that, and
amazing.
kind of created my own
Yes.
method of movement. Yeah.
Amazing. Isn't it
Hmm.
an incredible journey?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
things we have to go
Wild.
to get to the point to learn and feel like, oh my gosh, I'm turning a corner here and I'm feeling good and life is good. And wow, that was wild.
That was wild. But
Yeah.
everything is as it is supposed to be. I really
Yeah.
truly believe that I had to
Yeah.
go through all of that to be here.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for all those things.
I think it's a really cool point that you brought up. I saw that you have taken a teacher training or a training that involves like pelvic floor training, or I don't know if it was a yoga related pelvic floor training. And that's why I was super curious
Hmm.
to see what you've learned, because I have been talking to more people that are mentioning the downside of extensive Mula Bandha work, Uddiyana Bandha work, pelvic
Hmm.
floor engagement. I think I remember reading you post saying regarding that post the delivery of your second child that people were just saying, just do more Kegel exercise, just do more Kegel exercise and everything will be fine. So but if it's not too personal, just like to ask, like, what type of information can you share with us to help us to understand maybe a more balanced way of working our ability with pelvic floor exercise when we're practicing yoga or just in life in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the issue comes with obviously lack of education as well, like in the space, like especially in the Ashtanga, everything is practice and everything is coming. Practice and all is coming, and that's it. That's all they tell you, and then you just go. It's like, okay, but
Like, just
how?
go.
Just go. And yeah, so I think there's very little education, and we all learned it that way. And yeah, it is the traditional way of like parampara. You that from student to student and teacher and student, and that's kind of like how the old ancient way of how do you say, of the
Tran
lineage, right?
Yeah,
To
yeah.
but it's there is not a lot of yogic texts that have these pelvic floor information. And there is a lot of the use in the Ashtanga practice of Mula Bandha and like totally squeezing the pelvic. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're supposed to hold Mula Bandha for 2 hours of your practice the whole time, right? And Uddiyana Bandha. So this constant contraction of the pelvic floor, like the pelvic floor is not supposed to just contract. It's like the pelvic floor is like any other muscle, right? So when you're using a muscle, for example, if you take your hand and you're always clenching your hand, well, this is not going to be a very functional hand, right? You're not going to be able to grab things and use it for anything else. It's also going to be a weak hand, right? Because it's going to be stuck in this position, right? Usually muscles that are always tight are also weak muscles. And the health of a muscle is defined by its range of motion, like how it can stretch, relax, and contract, right? And not just being stuck in one position. And when you have constant gripping of a muscle or the pelvic floor all the time, it just causes a lot of tension, and causes problems like pelvic floor problems, like leaking, like queefing, for example. I realize like why everyone is always farting in Ashtanga classes. It's because everyone's just holding all the time, everything up all the time. There's no like the relaxation. So there should be like, I feel like a more approach where we can learn really how to use the breath and learn about the breath, how it functions properly. So how the breath, the diaphragm, the pelvic floor work together, how we're supposed to be breathing, and bring that into our practice. So it can be a more natural way of breathing, right? And you can, and the pelvic floor contracts when it needs to, when it has, when you're going to lift something harder, your or heavier, your pelvic floor is going to work harder, right? When you're laying down and you're sleeping, your pelvic floor is relaxed, right? But when you grab your kid, then you need a little, when you have more load, you need more contraction. So as if you put that in like the yoga mat, when you need to do a more intense asana, when you're in a handstand, or when you're like, doing something more intense, so when you need that lift upwards of the Mula Bandha, you need that lightness, you need that strength, then it's kind of like naturally is something that should come with the movement, and not something so much that you have to cue, right?
Yeah.
So I think just learning more, like having a little bit more of that education, it's really important. And then, the way you approach the practice, for me, like the Ashtanga practice was also like a little bit too masculine focus, and there's always that kind of pushing and hard part of the practice where you're always pushing. It's not as cyclical. And I feel like it was not really meant to be for women, designed for women, which we kind of have different needs than men. We have different needs than men. So
That
yeah, I
makes
don't know if that
perfect
answers the
sense.
question.
It does. It makes perfect sense. I've always kind of thought like there's so much emphasis that you should be squeezing Mula Bandha no matter what. And then you're going to go from down dog to jump through to seated position, that you should be just squeezing all the time so you're ready to do that. But if you don't even really think about it and you actually jump up and come through to seated, you're going to be engaging it to the level that you need it for the actual action. So it doesn't need to be an overemphasis of a squeeze, but just almost like it's going to squeeze. Don't even have to think about it. Like you don't even have to even think, which is funny because I remember
it should be automatic. It should be automatic. Like your body knows what to do. If it's a body that's, that if you don't have any like symptom, if you have a dysfunction, let's say, it should be doing what it's supposed to do. It's like you're not thinking about breathing right now, right?
Yeah.
You're just breathing. It should be an automatic thing. And then when you're doing practices or kriyas or things that are more like, okay, you're held in your breath, like kumbhaka or something, that when in a specific practice that you really need that, then I think it's okay, because it's more like a focusing. But where you're in a movement, you really don't need to have those, intentional squeezing all the time, I think.
It's fascinating. I hear you. What do you think, Maria, in relation to when you look back on your childhood? When I had body shame from childhood, and when I first saw Ashtangis in Mysore and I saw really skinny, muscle, ripped ability level, like almost like I was watching a wild animal, breathe, and I could see every sinew of every muscle. That because I had shame from my earlier days, when I saw that, I thought, finally, I found something that's going to get me to look like what I was shamed about when I was younger. And I feel like as the more I tried to push to be as sinewy and Ashtangi like crazy,
Mm,
awesome stuff that we saw, that I don't know, I think that almost let me not heal my dysmorphia ideas about me loving myself. You know what I mean? So did you have any of that too? If you look back on your childhood and that's like, I mean, because we're all are kind of shaped by what we talked about in the beginning. All of the imagery and all the messaging ever since we've been young has been, you need to look good and be healthier and skinnier and stronger and or bigger, depending upon what type of thing you're going for. And I don't know. I just don't. I mean, I know we all have to walk the journey, and it all has to happen and unfold in its own timing, and everything's happening in the right time for all of us. And I really trust and believe all that. But I guess I wish, I don't know, if I'd somehow been able to go into Ashtanga, but having somehow healed my body dysmorphia ideas and issues prior to, maybe I could have traversed that field with a little more grace or healthy way. But what has been your insight as you look back on your past to where you are now, and what sort of role your early thoughts about yourself played in that journey?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I really hope that you're enjoying this episode, and I just wanted to take a moment to announce a course that I'm really excited to release. It's a free course, and it's called 8 and 8 Learn 8 Limb Yoga in 8 Days. My goal is to help coach you along in the Ashtanga yoga practice in a way where we take just the sun salutations, the fundamental asanas, and the final breathing poses, break it down with some philosophy videos as well, explaining the 8 limbs of Ashtanga yoga in a very easy to use, friendly course that is totally free. Click the link below, check it out. Let me know what you think. All right, let's get back to the episode.
well, I think that that's why you were attracted to Ashtanga, right? Because that was, and I think it's okay to have ideals. Like, I think it's okay to be inspired by things and want to be like things, like, I think that's totally fine. Um, but to your question, well, it has a lot of this question. I think also I wanted to say, like, if there was also more diversity in that space, maybe you would have been able to done Ashtanga and not feel that way,
That's a
right?
really good point. Yeah.
I think the problem is, again, the non-diversity of the yoga space and the wellness space that makes people feel not worthy, and also like, I can't do yoga because I don't look like that, and my body can't do that. And because yoga became became a thing that was performative, that it was about how much you could do, and then you're a good yogi, you're the best yogi if you can do these, and you're a bad yogi if you can't. So I think that creates that kind of unworthiness and a non-accessible thing that I also really not like about Ashtanga, and that I didn't know I was part of in the time, because I was an able body. I fit that standard. I've always been skinny. I never tried to be skinny. I am very healthy my whole life. I've been very health conscious. Like, I've always been really healthy in the ways that I eat. I cook my food. I've always been interested in being healthy since I'm very, very young. I became a vegetarian when I was 17, and I was reading books about health like my whole life, and fitness. And then I found yoga, like the body has always, I was a dancer. So I've always been interested in ways to, be healthy and better, right? In not better, I don't know, I want to say better, but like to feel good, right, in my body. and I've always been an athlete. So, but I never really had any, I also was a model, so growing up in Colombia, I was very skinny, I fit the standard, I was a model, I worked in that industry, and I always felt like I fit in, and it was easy for me. So I can understand, I think, more now how um, I'm struggling more with that, to change the story of that, because I do feel like I have the same kind of beauty standards that we were talking about, that were shaped by, by the culture, by mostly by men, white men, right? The patriarchy, that have ruled all these spaces of advertising, of beauty, of, of fitness industries, and they just sit in a boardroom and decide how women should feel, be seen, and how they should look, and how they should smell. It's not women deciding these things, right? It's men. And then when you look at like aging, so this is, it's all coming into, like, for me now, it's been more of an awakening in that way, because I've had a harder time, because I am aging. I am going to 46, and I'm starting to see, my gray hairs that I'm not dying, I'm starting to see my wrinkles, the little, I don't know, rolls in your skin, the saggy skin. Like my daughter's like, why are your boobs point downwards? And I'm like, well, because of gravity, and I'm 45 and I breastfed you and your son. So yeah, my boobs like are saggy, and so, and then I am in the social media space where I have a big community, so I feel like, oh my God, like I have to show up. And how do I show up? And I feel like I struggle with that every day still. And that's why it's become like such a big part of my work, to empower not just everyone, but like me, really starts with myself. And I do it to changing the narrative with myself, that I feel like I can help other people change the narrative, so we all can feel better in our bodies and cannot be, feel ashamed, and we can, embrace diversity and embrace different bodies and people, and aging especially, because now going back to the post where we go to, we're seeing these Epstein files and all these horrific things that were done to children, and you start seeing, connecting the dots, and how, like, also, like, where the standards of beauty have come from. Maybe they have come from these sick pedophile men that have been controlling all these industries, and they don't want women, they want women to look like children. And it's really, it's sickening, and it's really intense to, like, kind of, for me to, like, think about, okay, where is this things coming from? And that's why I'm asking these questions right now.
Yes.
Because as I'm healing myself, and trying to show up in a space in a different way, and be like, you know what, I'm the resistance. How do I do that?
Yes. Yes, Maria. Amazing. Well, I'm with you. I think it's our job. That's kind of our job now. It's shifting, right? Like you said, I like that you're acknowledging, hey, we started before social media. Then we started getting involved with this whole concept that you have to promote yourself and you have to do all this, like, which basically, if we really look at it, was the social media platforms just getting us to build their platform for them to get more people to want to be on their platform so they could generate more ad revenue. But
right. But the algorithm also,
true.
prioritizes youth, and
True.
white and women, and all these standards. So it's like, how do you show up, right?
Yeah. Well, do you think we're going to need to let this whole social media thing go? I mean, at some point, there's going to be a place where the AI is going to be so unrecognizable from the human that we're only going to be consuming content that's AI generated. So at some point, wouldn't it almost seem logical that we're going to need to step away? Like, even though as much as I love podcasting and meeting with you on Zoom, I know there's no going back. So I'm not trying to say we need to go back to making fire in a cave and, but maybe we do.
I'd be so happy.
I mean, maybe that's where we're headed.
That's
We
where I'm
might
going.
actually be headed. Yeah, that's you're
Maybe
literally getting
coffee.
ready to go there. but
Yeah,
you know
I
what I mean? Like
mean,
it's gonna
mm,
press us to either going back to that
mm,
or full blown into some weird space. So I don't know. I think we're just
I
kind of
don't
coming to
know.
terms with that. Yeah.
I think that I want to think that there is going to be the resistance of people that are like, because when I start looking at posts now and everyone looks the same and everyone's doing the same thing, and then I read the captions and all the captions sound the same, and you're like, oh, that's a chat caption, and not saying that I don't use it, to help with edit and stuff, but I do have like I'm like, I don't want to sound like that. Like I want to sound like me, right? So how do we not lose the humanness? And I think that's the resistance. How do we like not look like bots and talk like bots and look like AI photos? And how do we, I think that's the answer. It's like, how do
Yeah.
we go back to our true nature, the
Yes.
remembrance and the
Yes.
reverence, and remembering our true nature of our humanity. And the humanity is the beauty of all these things that makes us human and unique, which are our wrinkles, our gray hairs, otherwise it's just really freaking boring, right?
Agreed.
I think.
Agreed. Agreed. I think so too. I mean, obviously we don't need to go to extremes and try to make ourselves, well, I mean, I don't know if that's even possible. Is it possible to accelerate the aging process? Like that would be a really rebellious thing to do. Be like, how can I make myself look as old as I possibly can look right now? Like that would be a funny way to approach it. So I'm not suggesting that, but I agree. I think so what are some things that you do when you look in the mirror and you're trying to cultivate this? Like the obvious thing is like, oh wow, I notice I have this new little thing here. And what's that? And like, oh my gosh, like, so obviously what we need to do is either A, stop looking in the mirror. Like
Yeah.
that could be one approach, right? That does make it a little bit easier. Have you ever tried that? Like
Yeah.
sometimes where
Yes.
like, God, I know right now if I take all my clothes off and I'm getting ready to get in the shower and I look at myself in the mirror, I'm probably going to start analyzing myself. So you know what? I'm going to do it and I'm not even going to look in the freaking mirror and just let me get my shower in and get out and just get away from you know what I mean? Like that's one way to do it.
Yeah,
Obviously
no, I love that.
there's the other way of to take the mirrors out of bathrooms. That might
Yeah, I
actually
actually lived last year in Indonesia. I was building my home, and they didn't have any mirrors for 4 months. So, and I was so happy, like it was really nice because I was feeling myself rather than seeing myself, with other eyes, or with men, the eyes of man, because that's how we're, no, like we think we're always seeing ourselves through, right? Through the
yeah.
mirror of man. So I think, not trying to feel ourselves from the inside is really good. I think that I do like a mirror every once in a while. I have very little mirrors. I actually only have one mirror in the bathroom. And I think instead of like when you were saying like, oh, I have a wrinkle, instead of being like, oh, I have this wrinkle is ugly, just practice awareness, just how we teach in yoga, right? We don't judge, right? We sit in meditation or we sit in our practice and we are cultivating awareness without judgment, right? So it's kind of like noticing and witnessing without labeling it, naming it, judging it, controlling it, pushing it, just seeing it, and being like, oh, I've got a new wrinkle. Hello, you know,
Yes.
and start changing, I think, the story like that,
Yeah.
instead of, and I think it's a practice. I do think, and changing the language of like how we talk to ourselves, because also there's been a lot of research on how, the way you talk to yourself really affects you in so many ways. So it's like noticing the language you're using when you talk about yourself, when you talk about your body, right? Instead of being like, maybe finding one thing that you look at the mirror and see like something you're grateful for that your body did for you today, and just changing it into more positive thought and just into a more awareness and witnessing. And then, being kinder to yourself in that way, like we are to our friends and our children, because we are harshest critics, right? So I think that starts like that. And then I think it's a practice, like, like your yoga practice, right? It's like you have to always come back to it. Like sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes you don't want to do it, but you show up and you do it and then you feel better. So I think it's something that you have to do and come back to and keep practicing. And for me, I do it every day. Some days I feel beautiful. Some days I feel ugly. Some days I wake up and I'm like, so noticing that
Yeah.
and just going back to that kinder self and until it becomes your default mode.
Well said. Thank you so much, Maria. When I hear you say seeing myself through men's eyes and as a man, I don't feel any offense when you say that. I feel
Sorry.
no, that's why I want to ask you this question. I don't feel offended. I feel like I can see what you're saying. Like I can see that there's been this strong, powerful male force that has shaped this view of that we kind of are looking through. So for any male that is still listening to you and I converse at this point, this far into the conversation, what type of advice can you give me, us, to help us to not feel so offended when we start to go into that space of acknowledging that there has been this type of external sort of view pushed on us to see the aging of women not be acceptable?
I
Tough
mean, I
question.
think,
Tough question. Yeah.
yeah, tough
Yeah.
question. I don't know. I think we have to see, like, our reality has been male centric, right? We live in a patriarchy. I mean, women are still fighting for their rights in so many ways, right? We've been in every way shrink and silenced and like not really able to take up any space, right? So I think like having a lot of compassion for women is a place to start, and not just always centering yourself in the conversation, and that takes a lot. I know, it takes a lot of courage, because, but I think it's trying to, when I try to understand someone else, when someone hurts me, for example, my partner or my son or something, um, I, instead of reacting and, going defending myself, I stop, and I take a breath. And again, this goes back to our practice of yoga, of not reacting. And it's really hard, right? But that is a real practice. That's why we're doing yoga, no? Not so we can put a leg behind our head. So we can stop and take a moment to breathe instead of react and decenter ourselves from that. And then be like, I'm going to put myself in their shoes because my shoes are different, right? And sometimes it's hard to see, or it's hard to see because we all perceive the world in a different way, right? So you perceive yourself as Todd that has had all these experiences as a male who's like grown up being a man, and all these things. And like my partner sometimes is like, oh, I grew up, he's short. So he always had this kind of feeling, that he was never enough because he was short and a man should be tall, and I'm always like, are you kidding me? And so I'm like kind of gaslighting his experience, right? Instead of being like, well, I was never short, so I don't know what that feels like, right? So maybe if I take a breath and then I'd be like, put myself into that experience, we can understand the other better rather than just react, right?
Yes.
And try to defend ourselves, because it's not about defending. We don't need to defend ourselves. And that's decentering yourself from the conversation, which is very hard to do.
Great answer. Thank you so much. I think you're absolutely right. I've noticed on viewing your platform that you host a lot of women's circles and or retreats, and that you've offered these all over the world. It's pretty amazing, all the different places that you've offered these retreats. And can you tell me what you've gained and or what you've noticed your retreat participants gaining by coming into a space with other women and or just humans that and creating a space where it's like, hey, let's take a look at some of this stuff and see what type of healing we can encourage by being honest with ourselves. What are you noticing by hosting this, and what sort of insights have you gained over the years by doing this?
Um, Honestly, it's like the most beautiful work, and my favorite time is when I have these women spaces. I decided to just focus on women in the last 4 or 5 years and be holding these only women spaces. And I don't want to say transformation because I feel like it's a little bit cliche and loaded word, but the way that when I see women come into one of these spaces and they just walk in the door and how they leave after 7 days is just like a completely different person. What happens in a space where there's only women and women choose to come and meet themselves in a different way, where they can be vulnerable and raw and open, and where there's a lot of storytelling and there's a lot of mirroring, which I think we really need kind of don't have anymore so much, spaces like that, and where we can see each other, and people can be, you can be their mirrors. I think women have a lot, they suffer a lot alone. We are just always taught to be quiet, and we suffer by ourselves, and we have all these things within us that we always have inside that we're suffering with and that we don't really openly talk about. And we have women's spaces like that where there's raw, vulnerable, like really a safe place to really see each other and listen. It's really beautiful what happens. Like really, really, like all the layers come off, all the masks, and women really are able to love themselves and see themselves and really remember who they really are, and take away all this other stuff that is always clouding our mind, and our perception of ourselves. It's like you have like a little crystal in the raw, and you're like polishing and polishing, polishing. And the day 7, you come out as this beautiful shining diamond crystal where you can see through it and you can see all your beautiful qualities and your power. And I could talk about it forever.
I appreciate it. I like it when you.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I want you to. I appreciate you being able to talk. Thank you so much. What is one of the, like, if we, obviously there's like an introduction process. Everybody gets to know each other. You sit in a circle. Let's maybe say our names. I'm sure you have a process. What's one of the parts of your process that you think is one of the main catalyst ingredients that seems to set the spark for, wow, where someone starts to really get that shift of self-consciousness to like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm myself and I can be myself. Is there any, I know it'd probably be different for every individual. There's probably different techniques and tools for different people in different situations, but is there a certain ceremony or practice or ritual that you find seems to really have some power to it?
Um, there's a lot, but I think a lot of it is leading them into their bodies, so like coming back into their bodies and out of their minds. So there's a lot of that work. And then the work that I do, obviously I use yoga asana, I use all the yogic tools of pranayama and nervous system regulation, meditation, sound, a lot of movement, somatic movement. So it's a lot about coming back into their bodies and getting comfortable being, and instead of doing. So it's a lot of like remembering and really grounding yourself in the body. And then there's a lot of storytelling and a lot of sharing where I think when we used to do this all the time, in the indigenous communities, in the ancient communities, women used to gather all the time to share and to be able to share your story. I have, we use little cards and prompts and things to really open people. We have nude experiences where, I mean, it's not necessarily, but when people really strip themselves and, take away all those layers of kind of identities that we're holding on to, and like the clothing that, the mask, when you're really able to like, you know, feel like yourself opening like that, and then hearing other women's stories really reminds yourself that we're all the same, and no matter how successful we are and how, beautiful we look, or how we, on the outside can have all these things that are shiny and glittery, and everyone thinks like, well, she has it all figured out. When we really sit in circle and we start really taking away all those layers and really going into the heart, you know, and then you realize like, oh, we're all the same, we all have the same issues, we suffer the same, and it kind of brings back that humanity. Um, and it just breaks all the ice,
Yes.
And it's really pretty
I can
to
imagine.
watch.
That's really cool.
It's a lot of crying.
I believe it. Wow, Maria, I'm really inspired by your work. It's pretty cool. I'm so grateful to have this chance to meet and speak with you. Thank you so much for sharing all this information. I really appreciate your willingness to jump on and to take some time out of your valuable day. I know you're busy. On that note, thank you. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with in the attempt to close our podcast together, our conversation together? Is there anything that you would like to add that hasn't been spoken, or any idea or thought, or maybe it's just silence, but anything that you'd like to share before we part ways?
I think we talked about a lot.
We did. I think we covered a lot. I think we covered all the bases I was really hoping to cover with you. So that's why I just wanted to, I don't think you need to add anything else, but I just want to give you the opportunity to see if there's anything you'd like to close with.
No, I think, I think it's just remembering that our bodies are not a photo project that we need to fix, but it's a life that's happening, and within us, and that, I hope that we can kind of like let go of that conversation at some point soon, because it's kind of boring.
Yes.
I think,
Yes.
You know what I mean? I
Yes.
don't want that to be the conversation. I want deeper.
Great point.
Deeper conversations.
Well, then if there was a part 2, what type of conversation do you want to have? Because I dragged you down this road. I invited you.
No,
I should say I invited you down this road. I didn't
important.
drag you. I invited you. And you were willingly came with me down with this invitation. But that's a great point. What conversation can we imagine? We don't have to go there right now, but I know.
We
All right.
can
We'll have to brainstorm.
imagine.
We'll have to
Yeah,
brainstorm.
let's
All right.
think about
Okay.
it. But
Okay.
I think,
All
no,
right.
I think this conversation is extremely important right now.
Yeah.
And I want everyone
too.
to hear it.
All right.
And I'm really advocating for this and really working really hard to get this message around, to empower women and men as well, to change the story, because you are part of the story too. So I think we can work together. And I think it's not about like women against men, because I think a lot of the time the conversation is like, oh, men are like defensive, like you're saying, like, oh, this is like the feminism. No, we have to defend ourselves. It's like, no, we're not battling anything, if we can work as a group, we have enough division in the world, right? Like, why don't we work together to change the story, to empower each other, to grow, together, to expand, to have deeper conversations, to see ourselves as nature, and and do it together rather than fighting each other.
Yes. Perfect, Maria. Thank you.
Thank you.
Native Yoga Toddcast is produced by myself. The theme music is dreamed up by Bryce Allen. If you like this show, let me know. If there's room for improvement, I want to hear that too. We are curious to know what you think and what you want more of, what I can improve. And if you have ideas for future guests or topics, please send us your thoughts to info@Native Yoga Center. You can find us at nativeyogacenter.com. And hey, if you did like this episode, share it with your friends, rate it and review, and join us next time.